that there are 12 months that Allah has made. And out of those 12 months, minha arba'atun hurum, 4 months, Allah Azza wa Jal has classed them as the months of hurmat, izzat, respect, honor, dignity that Allah has granted to these months. Every day, every moment that Allah has given us is something which we take it as the ni'mat and the bounty of Allah. Even sitting here now, and the seconds that we are counting and the minutes that are passing is the bounty of Allah, is the ni'mat of Allah, without which we cannot exist. But within these days and months and years that Allah gives, Allah has given virtue to certain months that other months don't have. The virtue that Hijj has, Zulqa'dah doesn't. And there is a reason. And the reason that logically we can understand, imagine if you have sailed 12 months throughout the year in a shop, then the enthusiasm of buying things would not be as if the shop has twice a year or yearly and half-yearly sales. People prepare, people save, and then the day comes and people queue up from 3 o'clock in the morning, or even from 12 o'clock. We have seen that in the past. Why? Because we know that the sale is not coming again until next year comes. We have our life and things to get on with. We have our children to look after them, drop them, pick them, all those duties. And when we look at it, these duties will not go away. Sometimes we say when children are old and they will be married and they will have their own life, then I'll be free and I will relax. Ask those parents whose children have grown and they are married, then they have different worries than the worry of dropping and picking and exams and other things. The worries will never end. The responsibilities of your family and children will not go away. They will remain with you because Allah has made this in our it has been made wadi'at. It's within ourselves. We do not detach ourselves from our children. Doesn't matter at what stage of the age they are or life they are. We'll be connected with them. So what do we do in certain days and months when Allah is giving? Are we ready to do? Allah is rewarding us more than the other months. Are we ready to take it? We can always be practice. We can always work around our schedules. We can always, take some time out for the deen, for the sake of Allah, to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is about the willingness. As an example, you have people who climb. They are climbers. They climb, mountains. Some people have willingness to climb the Himalayas. Yes? We have people in UK who climb the Snowdon and all those mountains which are famous. Now many of us cannot even imagine. Yes? Why? Because we haven't done it. We never willed to do that. We never thought of doing it. When you plan, when you want to do it, and when you think, yes, I will do it, then you plan for it, then you train yourself for it, and then you do it. Yes? If other people can do it, they are human. They do not have superpower. Why not? So taking time out for the deen is pretty much the same. If there is an individual who is dedicated to the deen, takes time out, prays, attends masjid, does not miss his salah, he does not, indulge himself into the haram activities, if they can do it, why can't I? What stops me from, acting upon that path? It is the willingness. I've never sat down, never thought, never planned to refrain from things that Allah has commanded us to stay away from. I've never thought about attending masjid on a regular basis, or whenever I can, whenever it's possible, let's just go to masjid. We never planned it. We never sat down and pondered upon that. As a result, we can't do it. But the prime example we have is the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When we look at the beautiful life of Prophet alaihi wasallam, Prophet practically demonstrated this willingness, and he acted upon it, and he presented in front of you and I how to do it. That is Sayyidah Aisha Siddiqa radiyallahu ta'ala anha. She stated there was the practice of Prophet ﷺ fasting the 9 days of Dhul Hijj. Prophet used to fast in the first 9 days of Dhul Hijj. What is the reason? Why did Prophet ﷺ do something which he does every month at least 3 times? Ayyam al-Bid, fasting in the bright days. In the month of Dhul Hijj, Prophet ﷺ fasted first 9 days. The reason was that Allah made Prophet to understand the beauty of the month of Dhul Hijj, the reward that an individual can attain in the month of Dhul Hijj, and in particular the day of Arafah, the 9th of Dhul Hijj, and fasting on the 9th of Dhul Hijj. So Prophet practically demonstrated that, yes, that he fasted. Now when Prophet fasted, now we do come across certain hadith in relation to fasting on the day of Arafah. There is a narration which has been mentioned by one of the Sahabi. He says, they have seen Prophet ﷺ not fasting on the day of Arafah. Then I've seen Abu Bakr not fasting on the day of Arafah. And then I've seen Umar not fasting on the day of Arafah. Imam Jalaluddin Suyuti has mentioned this in his book. Now the explanation to this has been given that there was the time when they were doing Hajj, when they were performing Hajj. For the one who is in the journey of Hajj, in the Arafat, on the 9th of Dhul Hijj, it is not recommended for them to fast. And the reason is, when you are in the Hajj, it takes a lot of energy to go through the whole process, the practice that you do. As well as on the day of Arafah is the day when you have to work extra. You have to do extra ibadah. You have to do extra takbir and tahleel and du'as and munajat to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if a person is fasting on that day, that will bring weakness to him. And as a result, Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, when they did Hajj and when they performed Hajj, they did not fast on the day of Arafah. And the narrations which do mention about not fasting on the day of Arafah are related to those who will perform Hajj. Talking about Hajj, your Hajj is being classed as the pillar of Islam. A person who is sahib istita'a, in financially and physically, is able to perform Hajj, Hajj becomes farz on him. And if he doesn't perform and he dies on the day of judgment, he will be held accountable. Now, you know what Quran says? Quran says, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. For the sake of Allah upon people is to perform Hajj those who are sahibi istita'a, man istata'a ilayhi sabila, who can go, have money and physically able to do so, and the one who doesn't. وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ عَنِ الْعَالَمِينَ. And anyone who did kufr, mean disregarded this command of Allah, having the money, having the resources, and physically being able to visit and perform Hajj, he did not. Allah Ta'ala said, Allah does not need anyone from the universe. I mean, you not praying salah will not bring any harm to Allah. Likewise, you not performing Hajj will not bring any harm to Allah. It will bring harm to you. Why? The reason is that the obligations that Allah has placed upon you, you must do so as soon as possible. Not waiting that I need to do this much and then I will do it. Now when you do it, then the hadith beautifully explains that in the month of Zulhijjah, this practice that people do, one of the great ibadah that you can do. Abu Hurairah is the narrator of this hadith and says Rasulullah stated, Man hajja hadha al-bayt, pointing at the Holy Kaaba. Says, Man hajja hadha al-bayt, falam yarfuth, walam yafsuq, raja'a ka yawmin waladathu ummu. This hadith has been mentioned in the Bukhari Sharif as well. Abu Hurairah says that Prophet ﷺ, he stated that anyone who did Hajj of this house, performed the Hajj of Baytullah, and he did not do any rafath. Rafath means all the boundaries that Allah has placed between you and your wife. You looked after those boundaries during the ihram. وَلَمْ يَفْسُقْ, as well as characteristic that you were supposed to hold during the journey of Hajj. You observed those boundaries and you performed Hajj. And Prophet said, when he returns, رَجَعَ كَيَوْمٍ وَلَدَتْهُ أُمُّهُ, he returned as if that's the day when his mother gave him birth. जिसने हज किया और उसने किसी किस्म की हज को पार नहीं किया, जब वो लौटता है तो ऐसे लौटता है जैसे उसी दिन उसकी माँ ने उसको जन्म दिया. So the month of Hajj carries great value that you can perform Hajj only during these days. There's another hadith that Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he stated that Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned during Hajjatul Wada. And he says, Ala, inna ahram al-ayyami yawmukum hada. Be aware, ahram al-ayyam, the highly sacred month, sacred day among the days is hada, today. The day when Prophet ﷺ was giving khutbah in Arafat on 9th of Zulhijjah. And then Prophet said, وَإِنَّ أَحْرَمَ الشُّهُورِ شَهْرُكُمْ هَذَا. أَحْرَمَ الشُّهُورِ, the most sacred month among all the months, be it the month of Rabi al-Awwal or the month of Ramadan, the most sacred month that Allah Azza wa Jalla has created is شَهْرُكُمْ هَذَا, this month which was the month of Zulhijjah. وَإِنَّ أَحْرَمَ الْبِلَادِ بَلَدُكُمْ هَذَا, and the most sacred city was city. For instance, stated the city of Makkatul Mukarramah, because Allah has placed boundaries, and that is why the area is classed as haram. Why is it called haram? Because there are things which are haram outside, which are halal outside. Allah has made it haram inside those boundaries. Prophet ﷺ stated in this hadith, this has been mentioned by Imam Ahmad and Ibn Majah in their books. Now the reason that I mentioned this hadith, that Prophet in the Hajj, Hajj in itself is sacred ibadah, an ibadah which is a lifetime journey. What Prophet ﷺ is stating in front of Sahaba, he is making sure the Sahaba and the Ummah, they understand that the day they are in is the most sacred day. And the month of Zulhijjah is one of the most sacred months, and the month which is highly virtuous when a person does ibadah in it. There's another beautiful hadith. Imam Ahmad and Abu Awana, they stated this hadith. This has been narrated by Ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala. He says, قال ما من أيام أعظم عند الله ولا أحب إليه من عمل فيهن من هذه الأيام العشر. That there isn't any day in the days, there isn't any day among the days that Allah has created in which the good deeds are highly beloved to Allah than these 10 days of Zulhijjah. Now, we know about Ramadan. Everyone prepares for Ramadan in different ways, in a spiritual way, in physical way, mentally preparing yourself. But what about the next month, the month of Zulhijjah, which will be arriving in a couple of days' time? We have to prepare. Now imagine, Prophet says that the good deeds you do in these 10 days are the most beloved compared to any other days outside of these 10 days of Zulhijj. And then Prophet told you what to do then. How do I increase my ibadah? How do I practice on what Prophet ﷺ has stated by doing something that will benefit me in these 10 days? So Prophet ﷺ stated, فَأَكْثِرُوا فِيهِنَّ مِنَ التَّهْلِيلِ وَالتَّكْبِيرِ وَالتَّحْمِيدِ. So increase in these 10 days the tahleel of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the takbir of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the tahmeed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The conclusion is, do the zikr of Allah. Remember Allah whilst you are walking, whilst you are driving, whilst you are in your bed about to go to sleep, rather than spending your time on watching shorts and videos which probably are not going to give you any benefit. You know, when you say kalima once, how much benefit do you get? Prophet ﷺ stated, "Man qala la ilaha illallah dakhala al-jannah." Anyone who said la ilaha illallah, how long does it take to say that? 2 seconds. When you say that, Prophet ﷺ stated dakhala al-jannah, that individual will be granted Jannah. Allah will make him enter in Jannah. Now you tell me you spent an hour surfing the social media. What benefit did you achieve? You spent 2 seconds in praying kalima. Now when you increase this in 10 days of the Hajj, how much reward will you be getting? We cannot imagine the reward that Allah will grant you and I if we act upon these commands of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. Now one of the famous hadith, Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala, he stated the wording is pretty much the same as what I've mentioned, that the ibadah in the 10 days of Dhul Hijj is greater and most beloved to Allah than the ibadah outside of the 10 days of Dhul Hijj. When Prophet said this, then Sahaba asked, قالوا يا رسول الله, said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, وَلَا الْجِهَادِ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. What about the jihad in the path of Allah? If it happens outside of the month of Dhul Hijj, what about that ibadah of jihad comparing to if a person does ibadah in the 10 days of, first 10 days of Dhul Hijj? Now the answer of Prophet ﷺ was, he says, وَقَالَ وَلَا الْجِهَادُ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Not even the jihad in the path of Allah. The ibadah in the 10 days, first 10 days of Dhul Hijj is greater than that. But then Prophet put the exception. The exception was إِلَّا رَجُلًا خَرَجَ بِنَفْسِهِ وَمَالِهِ, except a man who left himself and with his wealth that he had, ثُمَّ لَمْ يَرْجِعْ مِنْ ذَلِكَ بِالشَّيْءٍ, and he did not return with any of them. What does that mean? He became shaheed. None of his wealth came back. So he gave his life and he spent his money in the path of Allah fighting. That is greater. Other than all the ibadah that you do in the first 10 days of Dhul Hijj, they are highly rewarded. Now when we talk about Hajj during the days of Dhul Hijj, Sahaba and the Tabi'un, they had great precautions about these journeys. In general, when a person is money and he intends to go for Hajj, they will go for Hajj. But what is inside you when you are preparing for the Hajj? When you are there doing the ibadah, what is your intention? Ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala has been mentioned by Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali. Ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala was traveling for Hajj and looking at how many people were there going for Hajj. A person made a comment and he said, مَا أَكْثَرَ الْحَاجِ. You know, there's a great crowd of Hujjaj. So many people are performing Hajj. Ibn Umar said that. قال Ibn Umar, مَا أَقَلَّهُمْ. Yeah? مَا أَقَلَّهُم. There are very few. The crowd is huge, but the actual Hujjaj are very few. And then he saw ثم رأى رجلا على بعير على رحل ربط, and he saw an individual on a camel, and he was riding, his saddle was worn, his clothes were old, and the ropes that were holding his camel, it was working only one side, the other side wasn't even, completely done. So he was barely holding it basically. Hazrat Umar looked at him and he says, لَعَلَّ هَذَا, perhaps this is the one who is actual Hajj. What does that mean? That he intends to go for Hajj, even though when we look at him, he does not have enough. When we look at him, the way he's going is not for the show off. When people look at him, they will think he does not have anything. Look at his camel, look at his clothes, look at the saddle and everything that he's using. They are improper, and he's going for Hajj. That does not matter. His intention is clean, and that is why perhaps he is the Hajj. So every amal and every action that we do in this beautiful month, and in particular in 10 days of Hijj, including our Qurbani and sacrifices and slaughtering that we offer for the sake of Allah, it has to be pure, it has to be clean, and we have to utilize our time, and we have to train ourselves, and we have to prepare for these 10 days of Hijj to do something extra, a little bit different than any other month. And if we do so, this will give us the habit of preparing for the next period when it comes. For the next time when these kind of days come, we'll be ready for it, inshallah. Wa ma'alayna illa al-balagh. Assalamu alaikum.